The morning sun hadn't yet burned off the dew when Staff Sergeant Baxter's voice cracked across the parade ground like thunder. His face was inches from hers, close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath, the spit flying with every syllable. 200 soldiers stood frozen, watching, and Private Sarah Coleman did not blink. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. It had started, as these things often do, with something small. A bootlace, not quite regulation tight. A single second of hesitation during formation. To anyone else, it would have meant nothing. To Sergeant Baxter, it meant everything. He had spent 11 years building soldiers out of civilians, and he believed, with the conviction of a man who had buried friends in deserts far from home, that discipline was the only thing standing between his recruits and a body bag. So when he saw that lace, that flicker of imperfection, something in him ignited. He crossed the yard in 6 long strides. The recruits around Sarah shifted, sensing the storm before it arrived, the way animals sense a change in pressure before a thunderclap. Someone snickered. Someone else pointed. Sarah heard none of it. Her eyes stayed fixed forward, her spine locked straight, her hands trembling, just slightly, at her sides. "You think this is a joke, Private?" Baxter roared, his voice tearing through the humid air. "You think the enemy cares about your comfort? You think death waits for you to tie your boots, right?" The crowd of soldiers behind her erupted into laughter, the kind that spreads through a group like wildfire, feeding on itself. It was cruel, but it was also human, relief disguised as cruelty, the nervous laughter of people grateful it wasn't them standing in the sergeant's crosshairs. Sarah heard the laughter. She felt it land on her skin like small stones. And still, she didn't move. Her mind raced backward, unbidden, to a kitchen table in Ohio 3 years earlier. Her father, a mechanic with grease permanently etched into his knuckles, had told her she'd never make it through basic training. Not because she wasn't strong, because she cried too easily, he said, because she cared too much what people thought of her. She had promised herself, that night, that she would become someone unrecognizable to that fear. She thought she'd proven it. She was wrong. This moment would test her more than any obstacle course, any midnight march, any live-fire drill ever had. Baxter leaned closer still. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," he snapped, though she already was. Her jaw tightened. A single bead of sweat traced a path down her temple, catching the sunlight, and for a heartbeat the entire yard seemed to hold its breath. Even the laughter died. Even the wind seemed to still, as if the world itself were leaning in to see what she would do. This was the moment every drill sergeant waits for. Not to break someone, though many people believe that's the goal. It's to find the soldier who doesn't break. And somewhere beneath the fury in his eyes, something in Baxter recognized it. He had seen fear before, seen recruits crumble, seen grown men sob and beg for mercy. He had never seen someone stand so still. But recognizing strength and testing it are 2 different things, and Baxter was not yet finished. "You've got nothing to say?" he barked. "Nothing at all." The silence stretched. It was the kind of silence that makes an audience lean forward without realizing they've moved. Somewhere in the ranks, a young private named Torres felt his stomach twist. He had transferred in with Sarah, had watched her outrun every man in her platoon during the ruck march, had seen her carry a wounded teammate on her back for the final mile, without a single complaint. He wanted to step forward, to say something, anything. He didn't. Fear, that quiet coward, kept his boots planted. Sarah opened her mouth. Her voice, when it came, was steady, not loud, not defiant, but calm in a way that seemed to catch Baxter entirely off guard. "Sergeant," she said, "it's tied." It just came loose during the sprint. There was no excuse in her tone, no plea for sympathy, just fact, delivered with the same discipline she'd shown by not flinching. And in that instant, something shifted in Baxter's expression, so brief that only the soldiers closest to him caught it. Respect, buried under decades of hardened bark, flickered to the surface like a coal beneath ash. He straightened. The yard, still holding its breath, waited for his verdict. "Fix it," he said finally, his voice lower now, stripped of its earlier fire. "And next time, tell me before I have to ask." It wasn't an apology. Drill sergeants rarely give those. But it was something rarer still, an acknowledgement, wordless and absolute, that she had earned her place among them. As Sarah knelt to retie her boot, The laughter behind her had vanished entirely, replaced by something that felt, unmistakably, like awe. Torres let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Somewhere in the back of the formation, someone began to clap, just once, before catching themselves. It didn't matter. Everyone had heard it. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's standing still when every instinct screams to run. Sarah Coleman didn't win that morning by proving Baxter wrong. She won by proving her father wrong, by proving to herself that the girl who used to cry too easily could stand in the eye of a storm and simply not blink. The dust settled over the parade ground the same way it always did, but something had changed in the air, something that would follow Sarah through every mile of training still ahead of her. Strength, she realized, was never about being unbreakable. It was about choosing again and again not to break. If this story moved you, tell me, have you ever had to stand your ground when everyone expected you to fall apart? Share it below, and if you believe in stories about quiet courage, subscribe. There's always another one waiting.